All right, guys, it's time for a little bit of fun with more Tecmo Super Bowl. So we'll go back here to this wonderful version of the game and see what we have next for us. We'll see if it's harder this time or not. It probably will be. So let's see what we've got going on. Just want to see on the schedule. Yeah, we're playing Iowa this time, so we'll see how this works. Let's go ahead and just go to kickoff. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about here, and probably the biggest news, if you're following college football closely, is that Parker Kingston of BYU was arrested for rape, and this is a major issue. This is going to be a big issue for BYU, which is likely going to lose his services. My understanding is that the incident happened like a year ago, but that there's very, very strong evidence, and that he's actually apparently sitting in a jail cell at the moment. So like he really is arrested. I'm not sure if he even has ability to bond out or anything like that, much less, like, is this guy actually going to, be able to play for the team? This is a huge problem for BYU because, this guy was sort of going to be the #1 receiver next season. So we'll see what happens, but this could have some pretty big ramifications in terms of football in the Big 12 this next coming season. But of course, with the NIL and all that stuff, I mean, what's going to happen. We'll just go and grab somebody else. Anyway, I've got kind of mixed feelings about playing with this team after that sort of news. Just so you know, I mean, BYU is no stranger to this type of controversy. It has happened before. In fact, back when I was a student at BYU, did it even say touchdown? I feel like it didn't. Anyway, back when I was a student at BYU, this would have been 2002, I believe. There was a major controversy. This is back when Gary Croton was coach. There was a controversy involving sexual assault that involved numerous football players at once. This was shocking to the This was almost as shocking to the student population as my onside kick there was to anybody watching this. That was a major mistake on my part. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, that whole thing was really shocking at the time to BYU student body. Of course, you think about it as, oh, this is the Mormon school. This is the school where, the kids are, I don't know, they have the Cold Storm Sober Award and all this stuff. This stuff would never happen there, but it absolutely does happen. So we can go a little bit, I think, maybe back into, sort of the history of what's going on here to talk about this and why this matters. So just so you know, I grew up in the church, obviously, because I went to BYU. I'm actually no longer a member of the church, but I still have my own, ties and affiliations with it. It becomes very difficult, largely because of family. But officially speaking, I'm not on the church roster. So there you have it. I can tell you that there are, as you can imagine, a lot of problems with the organization, a lot of problems with the institution and the way that it acts and the things that it does and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff that, really, really makes me upset, and that made me upset back at that time, back when I was a kid. Oh, shoot, man. Oh, crap. We are down 10-7 now. Great. And there's no easy way to block this extra point either. Man, you guys made it too realistic. Anyway, so it is. It's actually a little more fun this way. Man, LJ Martin fumbles at first possession. That's okay. We benefited from that interception. So what goes around comes around. Anyway, so that's where was I going with this? So anyway, that's sort of what my perspective is right now on this whole thing, right? And yes, you can still be a fan of the team even if you're not a fan of the church. Even though the team belongs to the church, it's absolutely possible to still remain a fan of this, and it's actually pretty natural, especially if you grew up watching this team. It's no different than any other sports team. When I was talking a little bit about sort of the history of this stuff and all of that, there was this feeling at BYU, for a long time when I was there among the student population that actually cared about sports, that, this sort of scandal was not the sort of thing that normally would happen at BYU. Now, my suspicion is that during the Lavelle Edwards era, this was probably actually happening as well, and that there was probably a movement to try to cover this up. You have to remember that BYU was attractive to players like Jim McMahon, right? Jim McMahon was not exactly like, you know, your standard stereotypical Mormon, right? Jim McMahon was like anything but, you know. I don't know. What do you think we should do here? Should we punt or should we go for it? 4th and 20, we probably should punt. Oh shoot, I missed it. I tried to hit A at the right time, and anyway, that was not the best punt I've ever had. Anyway, so yeah, when it comes to, you know, the Parker Kingston stuff and all that stuff, like it is the sort of thing that has happened before at BYU. And also, as you can imagine, like having a school that's extremely puritanical means that a lot of people don't really know how to act in certain like situations and can be susceptible to, you know, like sexual pressure and stuff like that, which makes it even worse. And of course, as always, you have, you know, the fact that this person's a well-known athlete, you know, that can also make things really, really bad, and can make it also so that someone like Parker Kingston maybe might not receive the same sort of scrutiny that anybody else would receive, you know, in that situation. Anyway, what's going to happen in terms of BYU is, I mean, he's not going to end up playing for the school again. There likely will be an honor code investigation, honor code office investigation, which will consist of them discovering that he had sexual activity outside of marriage, which, you know, makes it really hard to stay in good standing at the school. It'll be just like, what's his name, the quarterback who we had, Retzlaff, is that his name? Who went over to Tulane. A lot of people online are joking that Kingston's going to go to Tulane now, and something like that probably will end up happening before the season starts. And that's just sort of what happens at the school. You know, there's been a lot of stuff like that happening at BYU over time. It's just that we don't talk about it that much. So if you remember in basketball, there was the Jimmer Fredette era. This is actually, this is kind of a history thing now. I mean, this was well over a decade ago, which is funny because it feels like it was yesterday. But during the Jimmer Fredette run to the through the NCAA tournament, BYU had a different player on that team. I can't remember his name, who got in trouble with the honor code office for having premarital sex. And because he did that, they ended up suspending him for like the biggest game in like the history of the basketball program, which is interesting. Now, there was a time in my life where I would look at that and say, oh, well, isn't it really remarkable that, you know, the church would care so much about, you know, its reputation and stuff to suspend somebody even before the biggest game. Now in my life, I look at it and I think, no, this is just more about, you know, control and making sure that people know who is in control and that you can't just do whatever you want no matter who you are. That's really what it's about. Anyway, that's a really long-winded way of saying that Parker Kingston is likely never going to play for BYU football again. Depending upon the outcome of this trial, he may or may not play college football again. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, we're down 10-7 here. Man, they've only had 43 yards of offense, and they're leading. Go figure that. Yeah, I love that. Roll damn Tide. Whoever made this really did a good job with it. Speaking of cheerleaders, so here's a little bit of another tidbit for you. At BYU, so there was a controversy when I was there, I don't remember which year it was, where people started talking, or they always talk about this, they talked about the cheerleader uniforms and why it is that the cheerleaders, you know, can wear uniforms that have, have their knees exposed, whereas the honor code is supposed to not allow that and all that stuff. Anyway, when I was a student there, I would kind of get into that as well, and it would alternate from sort of like, you know, a sort of like proto-incel view of like, yeah, how come girls get to do whatever they want, you know, which is crazy for a school and a religious institution that oppresses women actively. We would sort of range from that sort of feel to, you know, something more along the lines of, you know, oh, well, it's just because they're the popular kids and they can do whatever it is that they want and stuff like that. Actually, the reality is that when you learn about cheerleading, like, it's important for girls to not wear, like, you know, I don't know, like prairie dresses or whatever, right? Because like you need to have the room to like make, you know, these athletic maneuvers and stuff. You can't do that very well if you're wearing like a skirt that goes down to your ankles or even that goes down to your knees. Dude, Imola is freaking insane. Look at this dude, man. This guy's like nobody can get him. Nobody can get him. You have to dive to get him. The dude's gonna just knock you off. Anyway, so that's the whole cheerleader scandal. Now, the worst part about this, of course, is how the honor code is actually enforced at BYU. So when I was there, I worked at a cafeteria called the Cannon Center for a little while. I was the cashier. And the rules were that we had to make sure that everybody had shorts on that would cover the knee. But it was impossible to see that as the cashier, right? Because I had like this stand in front of me. And I felt really weird about, oh look, here's a girl coming in. Let me go check out your legs, right? I wasn't going to do that. You would get people who come in, you know, to have breakfast after they would go to the gym, and they would come in wearing, you know, gym clothes and stuff like that. And the biggest problem that I had back then is that you would get people who would come in and, you know, it would look like it was in accordance with the arbitrary honor code requirement. And then they would sit down, and then their whatever, the shorts would like ride up on their leg, right? And then my boss would come over and get really upset with me and say, you're not supposed to let them in if their shorts are that short, you know. Anyway, it was a really, really toxic culture. The great irony here, of course, is as somebody who, so the reason why BYU has that rule is because it's supposed to be like, you're supposed to get ready for wearing temple garments. Well, somebody who previously wore temple garments all the time, I can tell you that temple garments ride up all the time. Temple garment bottoms, right? So like I don't know, the only reason why they had this stupid rule and why they were acting like jerks about it is so that they could act like jerks about it. It's one of those things where, like, you notice this if you're in any sort of, like, you know, I don't know, workplace or whatever, you always get these people who, you know, have some sort of, I don't know, like, some sort of power or leverage or whatever, and they make it so that, like, it's like their whole life, you know? That's basically what this was. It was like the whole life of these people was like, you know, making sure that, you know, people were going to adhere to their random rules or whatever. It was pretty bad there too, right? Like, so, you know, right, I obviously have a beard now. When I was at BYU, I could get away with not shaving once in a while if I wanted to because my hair is blonde. But if you had dark hair and you didn't shave, you could never get away with it, right? Because if you didn't shave, you would not be allowed into the testing centers. There was a centralized place where they would have tests, and they would not let you take your test if you had a beard unless you had a special beard card. And they had a beard card, so if you were Muslim, you could have a beard. It would be a student card that would basically show your face with a beard on it. Which is good to know if you happen to be a BYU student. You're watching this because there are ways to fake this if you want. Because they don't really have a good way of, or at least back in those days, they didn't have a good way of keeping up with it. I'm assuming now probably they do. Anyway, but you know, I knew guys who would shave, and because of the complexion of their skin, it would look like they hadn't shaved, and so they still couldn't go take the test. It was the craziest thing I'd ever heard of. And like the bathroom at the testing center, it was not protected. It was not the part that was, you know, being proctored and stuff like that, right? So like the males restroom there would have like a whole bunch of guys would be in there shaving, right? So they could take their test. I mean, it's just like the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard of, right? The whole reason for that, by the way, there's no restriction in the church on having facial hair. You know, Jesus Christ is portrayed as having a beard in like all of the church's, you know, materials and so forth. The whole reason for this was because there was worry back in the 1960s about left-wing radicals taking over the school, and so you know, the people in charge of the school decided that they were going to implement this really stringent set of rules about what you could wear, what your hair could be like, and so on, right? And that's really where the honor code comes from. And they try to make it look like, you know, the students voted on it or something, but it's not true. The students didn't have any say. Anyway, so yeah, there's my really, really long BYU and LDS rant. It's all good stuff. There are people who will tell you, well, if you don't like it, don't go to school there. And I actually do agree with that. I mean, these days, like, really, honestly, if it's a major issue to have these types of rules, you probably should go to a different school. It can be very difficult, though, because if you're at the school and you end up no longer believing in the religion, they can and will like kick you out. And that can be a real damaging thing, of course, right? Because you have to hope that like your credits are going to transfer and stuff like that. So fortunately, I didn't have to worry about that in my time, but I do know people who have had to worry about stuff like that, and it's not a very, very fun experience. Boy, we got really lucky there. So it looks like we're going to win this game. I was a little worried for a while. Iowa had the lead for quite some time, but we've managed to make it ugly. You knew when you saw Iowa was going to be an ugly game. No offense, Iowa fans, but that's the way it is. And hopefully you've had a good time listening to me talk sort of at random about things that honestly are really no longer any of my business, but that's sort of the way that it is. Let's see if Bear can run for us. We run that clock down. Yeah, he's got the first down. This time we don't want to go out of bounds. We want to stay in bounds. We're going to give it over here to LJ, and that's going to end this game. As long as he doesn't fumble. There you go. 17-10, we get the win. Boy, this was not an easy win, but we did have, 219 yards of total offense. They didn't even have 50. Wait. No, they did. They had 52 yards total offense. Man, talk about, just grinding it out. Man, that's a real interesting approach to offense. Imoa ended up with 2 receptions for 96 yards, so he was definitely the star. But most of that was yardage after the catch. So we're doing okay so far. Our next game, I'm guessing BAM is Bama, right? Whoever put this together was a college football fan. I tell you that. But we got to play Indiana next. We're going to get creamed. All right, we go over to week 5. So we'll go skip to week 5. And let's do our kickoff. I'm guessing that this game probably has a better, Bama, I was right. This game probably has a much better playoff setup than actual college football. I'm guessing that's what we're going to find. So anyway, this is a lot of fun. Stick around for more of this, definitely, because a lot of kind of crazy things are going to happen. Bama wins again. And we probably should be slowing down to watch some of these. I'm starting to think maybe we should do more than one season with this, because there's a lot of kind of cool teams to play with, a lot of cool matchups to think about. Anyway, so we'll take a look here really quick at the standings if it works. I think it will. Oklahoma is up on top there. TAM is Texas A&M. Over in the ACC is Georgia Tech. There's no surprise. Among the independents, of course, Notre Dame, but also JMU. Go JMU. I should have chosen JMU. Maybe we'll do JMU next, because we've been to James Madison University. We were looking at that with our oldest, who's going to college before too long. That's a really nice campus. So don't get down on JMU. Yeah, Indiana is apparently in the Big Ten. That's what we're looking at. And then there's of course Ohio State. No question about that. Texas Tech, of course, is doing well, and then we're doing well over here. But yeah, we got to worry about playing Indiana next. I don't think we're going to do very, very well, but we'll see what happens. So there you have it. If you haven't tried this ROM yet, you really should go over to tecmobowl.org and grab it and give it a try. It's a lot of fun, so I definitely highly recommend it. Anyway, there you have it. Sorry for the long rant about stuff that you're probably not interested in, but that's the way that it works here, right? We always have something like that. Anyway, I'll talk to you next time. Bye.